RT sitting down with veteran media critic, filmmaker, journalist, and Emmy winner Rory O'Connor. Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I'd like to start with the topic of modern-day media in the United States. Real reporting, where is it now? Is it alive and well? Is it dying? Or is it dead and gone?
The first thing I would say is that most of the original reporting, let's use that term rather than real reporting, most of the original reporting is still being done by newspapers. So you have a media system, a media ecology, if you will, where print, which is the dying medium, is still creating most of the original reporting on which the entire rest of the media system is based. The second point, of course, is that newspapers, in particular magazines, the print media in this country are in an economic crisis right now. They're in free fall. So what we're seeing is that newspapers are cutting back, laying off, buying out journalists. So there are fewer and fewer journalists working for newspapers, working for magazines, which means that there's less and less original reporting upon which all of the commentary that we see in the blogosphere, in cable television, and all the other media is based.
Now, your book, Shock Jocks, Hate Speech and Talk Radio, talks about the 10 worst hate talkers in America. Who are they?
Well, they're well known. They're Rush Limbaugh. They're Glenn Beck. They're Bill O'Reilly. They're Sean Hannity. There's no place in our society to have a disagreement that is based, as this hate speech is, particularly with the shock jocks on talk radio, on people's ethnicity, on their religion, on their gender. So what we find is that the shock jocks in particular are going after the most vulnerable members and sectors of our society, calling women feminazis, as Rush Limbaugh is wont to do, for example. The shock jocks in America are people who are very well known, very well paid. Anyone that they can kind of peel off and then use this really despicable hate speech to make them the other, to dehumanize them. That's the effect of what they're doing.
Why are they popular with the people if what they do is hate speech?
Let's face it, it's the oral equivalent of driving down the highway and seeing an accident. Okay, everybody says they're not going to look, but everybody does. You can't take your eyes off of it. So you can gain a large audience by being outrageous, by being extreme. And that's what they do. The other thing is that they are entertaining. Now, the problem is that on the one hand, they cast themselves as entertainers, and they just say, I'm just joking, it isn't serious, lighten up, why are you being so politically correct? On the other hand, they're functioning as journalists. So their audience thinks that they're getting real information from these people. So they tend to try to have it both ways. When they get attacked for saying something that isn't true, they go, hey, lighten up.
The United States is one of only 2 countries in the world that allow direct advertising to the consumer of prescription drugs. Talk to me about that. This seems very dangerous.
Money has infested and infected the entire American political system, and our democracy is threatened by it. And here's how it works. In order to be elected, you need a lot of money. You need a lot of money to buy television ads and to do all the other media that you need. Now, so the politicians go out and they ask corporations for money. The corporations give them money, and then the politicians turn around and pass legislation or put in regulations that gives even more money back to the corporations. So what you're talking about, the direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical ads were banned in this country prior to 1998. You know how much money is coming through? $4.2 billion, with a B, billion dollars every year is spent on advertising direct to consumers. So this was a boon, a gift, if you will, to the media and to the communications industry by the Democratic Party in exchange for support.
Is there a reason why, sometimes the United States is referred to as Prozac Nation? What is it doing to the people?
I think the advertising is dangerous because under the guise of supposedly giving information direct to the consumers, what it's doing is giving a lot of misinformation, a lot of false hopes to people. So, you turn on a television and all of a sudden there's an advertisement for a drug that you've never heard of, for a disease that you've never heard of, because they've actually made up some of the diseases. So they're making up an illness, convincing you that you have it, and then convincing you to buy their drug to treat the illness that doesn't exist. It's bad for health, and it also is driving up healthcare costs at a time that we're in the process of trying to bring them down.
Let me ask you, when you watch the mainstream media, is there anything that gets you really outraged that you see, or you're over it?
When I watch the mainstream media, I tend to throw things at my television set, so I try not to watch it that often because, yes, I still do get outraged, unfortunately. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom and say there's nothing good in the mainstream. There is. But I think that we have a big problem in this country when the most trusted news person in the country is a comedian named Jon Stewart, who says, hey, I'm not a journalist, I'm not a newsman, don't trust me, I'm only joking. And I think it tells us a lot about our system when the comedians are more trusted than the journalists are functioning as comedians and as clowns. That's what needs to change.
So who should Americans turn to for real, truthful information?
Americans and people around the world should not just have one or two sources of information. They should turn to as many places as they can. And we find that that's what's happening. That's what happened during the Iraq War, when large swaths of the American mainstream media seemed to be, let's say, in the tank for the war. So people who were looking for information weren't able to get it. They started going other places. They started looking in the UK, for example. And I would advise people to get as many different, diverse perspectives on news as they can from all over the world, and then draw your own conclusions and ask your own questions.
One of the awards you've received is the George Orwell Award. You tend to mention him in your work every once in a while. And I want to talk about this concept of Big Brother that he created. What kind of shape and form do you think it has nowadays? Is Big Brother still around?
That's a very interesting question because, the fear of 1984 of Big Brother, which after all, Big Brother was the government watching you. And yes, we do have that reality. We're here in Manhattan, New York City. You can't take a step on the streets of Manhattan or London or probably Moscow, many other big cities around the world now, without it being videotaped. We're under constant surveillance, if you will. But the irony is that people in the internet age are actually exposing themselves more freely. So it's not Big Brother anymore. It's really little me going out to Facebook and to Twitter and all these new social media and saying, hey, look at me. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my status update. Here's where I am. Here's where I'm going. So we're finding a complete redefinition of privacy that's underway right now. And it may just be that one of the major effects of the internet is that there is no private life anymore. We're all living our lives 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in public.
One of the last independent documentaries that you produced was Barack Obama, People's President. Is he the People's President?
He's some people's president and others not. He was elected president by a majority, so he's going to be the president at least for another 2.5 years. He might be a one-term president. So Barack Obama, to me, is not a puzzle. He's not the Messiah. He is not as liberal as he has been portrayed, particularly by the conservatives in this country. He is a centrist. He is not a revolutionary so much as he is wanting to reform the system a little bit about the edges. What have we seen him do? Billions of dollars in loan guarantees to build nuclear power plants. Hardly a liberal position. Is he the people's president? Some of the people, some of the time.